So it appears that my premonitions were somewhat correct. And I wouldn't say correct, but I'll say it seems accurate to me that this is probably what's going to go on. Now, apparently, according to reports now, Ubisoft has acknowledged its recent buyout reports. The conversation about the Guillermo family considering a buyout from Tencent is something that they've already acknowledged, saying that it's regularly reviewing its options. I think this is a path that is supposed to go forward with them, and there might be another third-party interest just to kind of, in a sense, buffer things. What I think the Guillermo family might do, and this is just me giving my own opinions. I have no data. I have nothing. Just me shooting from the hip. Let's just call it that. Hip fire, baby. I think because of the way Tencent has approached its management, whenever it's an investor, they might partner with Tencent to be able to buy out other investors that at this point may not be satisfied with what's going on, if Tencent is willing to do that, and possibly find another third-party investor as well who they may be willing to also work with to also kind of buffer that relationship as well. And then they would also hold a significant amount as well in terms of control. And then the company is going to go basically the Epic Games route, where it'll be more private than anything else. And then they would have bought out the shareholders, and they'll be able to pretty much make a lot more in terms of decisions by themselves. This is where I see Ubisoft going with this particular paradigm. Now, some have said that there's not going to be a Division game based on this. I can't tell you one way or the other. I mean, the other day there were no plans for the Division, and then there was Division in development, and they're still hiring for the Division. They're still posting it on Twitter. So business is still going on as usual. So again, no one can really say how this is going to affect the Division at the end of the day, but I really do think that the Guillermo family is going to hold on, especially the fact that this is a business that they have started since the 80s. Like, you guys have to understand. It's not that they're coming to somebody to try to say, oh, please buy us out. No. Ubisoft is a company that has access to valuable technologies, valuable IPs. Like, they know the worth and the value if this company ever were to reach peak, optimization and potential. Not even peak. Give Ubisoft 50% potential, and they'll literally be knocking on the door of Activision. They were at one point. They had the capacity to. I remember reading one of their shareholders, presentations where they said they had more individual owned IPs, like the IPs that Ubisoft owned, than competitors like Take-Two, EA, and, even I think Activision, because they have a lot of games under the Tom Clancy name that were established. They had games under the Far Cry name, which were established. They had games under the, what's the other franchise? Assassin's Creed franchise, which was already established. But now they seem to be going through the screw to pooch, framework. And that's what's just basically doing them in. And so even with that, it was weird, though. And I said this at the time, why they decided that in having all these IPs, they went with the Hollywood Star Wars and the Avatar movie paradigm and abandoned those IPs. It was quite shocking to me, because they had bragged that they actually were not like EA, who had to pay FIFA a bunch of money or pay everybody else, because that time EA was actually leveraging a lot of Star Wars at the time. And they were saying, well, we didn't have to share profits with anybody else, while at the same time developing two big games that they were going to share, profits with at the end of the day. So again, that I think was just so strange. But I mean, who knows what the decision making was actually trying to pull off at the time when these conversations were being had, and when shareholders were being, when these things were being exposed to shareholders. So at the end of the day, the Division 3 is in a very weird place, to be very honest. I mean, I would want for it to happen, but at this point, what's the worst that could happen when it comes to that, right? The fear now, though, and I think this is a genuine fear, is that if the company goes private, everything is going to change. The company is going to lean and thin itself out, because it's not going to have the infusion of investors that it did have in the past. So what that's going to mean is, it's going to have to cut a lot. It's going to cut down a lot. And I don't necessarily know if this so-called trying to force behavior thing that was going on with investments back in a few years ago, I think gamers are trying to force back the behavior of the video game development companies. The investors can do what the heck they want, but gamers are saying to the video game companies, man, no, we're going to force your behavior to change, and whatever it is that's going on, there seems to be kind of a tit-tat in the back and forth. So this is where I think Ubisoft is. So let's read a little bit of this report that was written by Tom Henderson. He says here, he writes, last week, a new report from Bloomberg revealed that the Guillermo family is considering a buyout from Tencent. The news came following the company's stock falling to an 11-year low, as games like Star Wars Outlaws have struggled to meet the company's expectations, and its biggest launch of the year, Assassin's Creed, was delayed into 2025. It's noted that recent press speculation regarding potential interest around the company, and it says it regularly reviews all the strategic options in the interest of its stakeholders and will inform the market if and when appropriate. So maybe they're just taking time to let some things blow over. Maybe they're trying to call and make phone calls and talk to some people. They do have a lot of financial industry investors as well, too. It's not just Tencent. It's not just the investor group from, I think it was from Europe, that investor group that wrote out the letter with the suggestions. I think it was a minority investor at that point. So they do have some major stakeholders. And it seems like they all share a lot of interest at the same time. But the majority shareholders seem to also not be too happy because this is a company that punches out a lot of games. 20,000 plus or less, more or less, developers. The capability to put out 3 to 4 games a year, every year, is big. It's really huge. But the expense to do that is actually also high. So you cannot afford for your games to be mired in controversy of every sort. If it's not bugs, it's political. If it's not political, it's social issues. If it's not social issues, it's the newest current culture war. If it's not that, it's bugs. And then the cycle continues again. And so they can't necessarily deal with all that. So if anything, Assassin's Creed Shadows is going to come out as is, but they're going to make it the most polished experience that they possibly can within reasonable range, so that at least that way it's technically sound. However, even before we even saw anything about the technicality of the game, they didn't want the same repetition of Star Wars. We're back in a place where they've pretty much delayed the game so that there's no technical question about the game. There's still going to be the other side of the game that has pushed the game into the limelight that has to still be addressed and will still be addressed. So they're in a rock and a hard place, but, you know, one of them is harder than the other. The rock might not be too hard. The hard place might not be too hard. They just got to lean in on one of them, but they can take the blow, or they can cushion the difficulty by polishing the game at the least, so that it removes one agency of problems that they usually face with their games. This is a very interesting time. I strongly believe that if this kind of pressure remains on Ubisoft, and a Division 3 comes out of it, we may be getting the most polished Division 3 experience that we've ever seen. And this is the beauty of competition. This is the beauty of a competitive market when it's functioning the way it should function. Because somebody could come in here and as a radical investor and just infuse money and buy it all out and say, let's keep the thing that we were doing going and screw these customers. Because, man, again, it seems like these people feel like they have infinite money glitch somewhere. And that could also be, you know, a reality too. So don't get too happy. Just let this whole thing play out. Let's see how it all lands, and you will know where you stand as a customer, as a gamer. All right. Thanks so much for watching the video. I appreciate you guys so much. Let me hear your thoughts in the comment section. Hopefully we'll talk pretty soon in another one. Peace out.